one of the things that I could say, having been Liber Christo trained, is that all of us are protected by patriarchal protection. When you step out of patriarchal authority, you open yourself up to demonic retaliation. Sean Combs had no patriarchal protection on a natural level. He had no patriarchal protection on a supernatural level. He had no relationship with God. If you look at the fruits of his life, his mom also had no patriarchal protection as well from the father or her husband, based on the fruits of her life as well. And so these guys were easy pickings for demons. Dan, you're one of the only persons, Father Chad Ripperger, and a Protestant guy by the name of Jonathan Kane, who talks about the return of these gods, lowercase g. The return of the gods, that's Jonathan Kane is a Protestant author, where he talks about the connection, the nexus between these ancient pagan gods in Rome and Greece that were driven away by and large by the rise of Catholic Christianity, by the rise of churches, amphitheaters and temples were turned into churches. And when the church came out from underground and we received religious liberty post Emperor Constantine, and the church started driving away these ancient pagan gods and transforming their temples. Well, it seems to me that the destructive ideologies in our country, as seen by Sean P. Diddy, Epstein, Weinstein, they're taking us back because there's a parallel. They're trying to have us return to these pagan roots of orgies and the occult and intoxication. And to me, this is just a sign of the modern times returning back to our pagan roots. As Christianity seems to wane.
Yeah, former President Obama said that the United States is post-Christian, right? But to be post-Christian is to be neo-pagan. That means nature and supernature and preternature abhors a void, and that void is being filled by these ancient cults, whether they know it or not. This is a description. Let me read this to you from a historical source on the Dionysian mysteries. This was the god associated with wine, intoxication, fertility, fruits and vegetables, madness, and ecstasy. The individual participated in rites to honor him. They used techniques such as consuming alcohol and other intoxicants and taking part in ritualized dances and orgies in hopes of achieving a different state of consciousness. Freed from typical social constraints, participants in the ritual could achieve a transcendent state of being, and potentially have a direct encounter with the god himself. Intoxication associated with consuming wine was sometimes interpreted as someone having an experience of divine possession. And this relationship later led to individuals deliberately consuming wine to trigger this experience. Some scholars also believe that in order to heighten the experience of intoxication, the individuals would also have consumed substances such as poppy, which contains the compound which turned into opium. The rituals were practiced in secret, and only individuals who had been initiated into the cult were able to witness or take part in the rituals. Individuals sought to enter into a primal, liberated state of ecstasy. Going back to what you're talking about even at the golden calf incident, the rituals typically took place in outdoor locations where individuals could dance, run, and move about wildly. If you've got a 15,000 square foot mansion with all sorts of bedrooms, that would suffice, right? The wild, unconstrained nature of the rituals and the fact that worship of Dionysus was often appealing to marginalized individuals such as women, slaves, and non-citizens led governments to often be skeptical of the cult and even times seek to suppress it. The popularity of the cult of Dionysus, again, this was the ritual performed at the Olympics. The enemy hides in plain sight. He's showing us this is where he's taking our culture. The Dionysian mysteries led to the rituals eventually spreading to Roman culture beginning around 200 BC, not long before the Maccabean revolt. The god of wine, freedom, intoxication, and ecstasy named Bacchus was introduced into the Roman pantheon, and Roman citizens began to worship him by taking part in private rituals. The Roman historian Livy discussed the Bacchanalian rituals in his history of Rome, presenting them as highly sexualized and violent. What does that sound like, Jess?
That sounds exactly like what Sean P. Diddy's freak-off parties that he was hosting in New York and in California.
Yeah.
Again, what tells me, I don't know if Sean P. Diddy was a history buff, but in some way, shape, or form, Dan, he knew about this. And he was emulating an old ancient practice. So he either read about this or was told about this by other corrupt mentors, say, hey, man, let's go back to these pagan rituals and let's, invoke demons and have orgies. Or he had psychological compatibility with a demon that was pushing his behavior to such a disordered, in such a disordered manner that he ended up embracing this as a result of just being impelled through a demon, through psychological compatibility.
Yeah, not even that. I think you're looking at a case of uncontested possession. Someone that is completely uncontesting the possession. Who knows when it came in? Probably during one of the times that he was invited to go to work with his mom. And share in her work at the office, so to speak. So in that, again, what the demon always tries to do is to create the biggest platform as he possibly can and to bring as many people in. So he's really done a favor in a sense to us by exposing all the other depraved occultists and Hollywood and political elites, if we ever get the truth, and we never did get the truth about those involved with Epstein. So who knows what'll be revealed, and the government controls the narrative at this point. So, but this is again not new, even among Christians in the 300s. We have Epiphanius of Salamis. He's a doctor of the church. Talks about a group called the Borborites that were founded by Nicholas. That was one of the seven deacons in Acts that apostatized, according to several ancient writers. And the Borborites were. This is where we get the dirty of filthy ones. Borbor is mud, the mud eaters. They did all sorts of rituals similar to this. They would have similar orgies, but it would be a mockery of the mass, and it would be a mockery of Christ in the mass. But this was an infiltration of the church that Epiphanius was recruited to. The next thing I wanted to describe is the heretical group that is closely associated with Nicholas, the Borborites. This group is like a wooded area that is overgrown with field grass, a group of thorns intertangled in every way, a big pile of trees. So he's very flowery. I describe this way because of the union with the heretical group of the wretched Nicholas. Now, just as human bodies catch sickness from other human bodies by inoculation, a really bad itch or leprosy, so the ones who are referred to as the Gnostics are somewhat connected with Nicholas, the Nicolaitans. We hear mention that in Revelation because they took their promptings from Nicholas. Others of them turn to introduce a fictitious works of pornography, a fabrication, claiming the gospel of perfection. They foul their supposed assembly self with the dirt of promiscuous fornication and eat and handle both human flesh and uncleanliness. I would not dare utter the whole of this as if we're somehow compelled from the excess of the feeling of grief over me, of the futile things that they do, the depth of the evil which the enemy of mankind, the devil, leads to those who trust him to pollute their minds, hearts, hands, mouths, bodies, and souls of the person he has trapped into such deep darkness. So he says, I shall get down to the worst part of the deadly description, for they do not vary in their wicked teaching what they please, which is first of all that they hold their wives in common. And if a guest who is of their persuasion arrives, they have a sign that men give women and women give men, tickling of the palm as they clasp hands in supposed greeting, to show the visitor is of their religion. And once they recognize each other in this form, they start feasting right away, and they set a table with lavish provisions for eating and drinking, even when they are poor. But then after the drinking bout, they let stuffing of their overstuffed veins, they get hot for each other next. And the husband will move away from his wife and tell her, speaking to his own wife, get up and perform the agape with this brother. And when the wretched couple has made love, and I am terribly ashamed to mention the vile things they do, for as the holy apostle says, it is a shame even to speak of what goes on among them. Still, I should not be ashamed to say what they are not ashamed to do, to arouse horror by every means of those You hear what obscenities are prepared to perform. Anyway, so then after they do that, they do a mockery. I won't get into details. You can look it up. Epiphanes, and they do a mockery of the Holy Eucharist there as well. And they claim that eating of flesh and drinking of blood is a mockery of the Eucharist, etc. This stuff has been going for a long time. These are not just some crazy kooky medieval theories, some crazy kooky Protestant theories. These are ancient sources. These are saints and ancient historians that are showing that this garbage has been around since the ancient of times. If we're made in the image of likeness of God, right? Something in male and female reflects the image and likeness of God, and something about the procreative act. It shows us the inner life of God, that God who is one, God the Father has such love for the Son that the love bears forth the Spirit from the Father and the Son, right? The Holy Spirit. There's something in the triune God, the inner life of God, that is reflected in man and woman. And so the more that the demon can destroy that image and likeness of God, the more that he can then disface and mock God himself. And so we see these rituals back from the very beginning, Jess. These are ancient things that most of us are not aware of, but what they're performing, whether they're knowing or not, are ancient Dionysian type rituals.